After fixation, Meiofauna organisms can be extracted from sediments via density separation. This process utilizes a fluid with density close to that of the organisms in the sample. Therefore, Meiofauna will remain in suspension while heavier sediment particles will sink to the bottom. Preparation of Ludox. Ludox is a silica-based chemical solution. It comes with a concentration of 1.4 grams per milliliter and is diluted to a density of 1.18 grams per milliliter. This ensures that most of the meobenthic organisms can be extracted from the sediment. A densitometer from 1.1 to 1.2 grams per millimeter is used to measure the density of the Ludox. Preparation of sample. First, it is important to label the centrifuge tubes and sample containers with the sample code, date of extraction, content, location, and name of the scientist. A 1 mm sieve is placed on top of a 38 or 32 micrometer sieve to separate the macrobenthic fraction. Everything retained in the 1 mm sieve is preserved in formaldehyde 4%. The sample is initially poured over a waste container to remove most of the formaldehyde. The remaining sediment retained on the 38 micrometers and 1 mm sieves are rinsed with tap water under a fume hood to remove the residual formaldehyde and finer sediment particles. It is important to avoid splashing with the risk of losing part of the sample and continue washing until the water passing through the sieve is relatively clear. The sediment is concentrated to one side of the sieve. Then the sediment is transferred to the centrifuge tubes using Ludox. The ratio sediment Ludox should be about 1/10. It is important to rinse the materials each time you change samples. Centrifugation. All tubes and tube holders are balanced before placing them in the centrifuge. The opposite sides of the centrifuge must have the same weight. The centrifuge program is set at 3,000 revolutions per minute for 12 minutes. After centrifugation, the supernatant is poured over the 38 micrometers sieve, avoiding the transport of sediment. The material is washed one more time to remove Ludox and placed in a small recipient. This step is important as the final sample will be preserved in formaldehyde and any trace of leftover Ludox would react to the chemical and crystallize, making the identification process particularly challenging. The centrifugation process is repeated twice more to extract the majority of organisms. The sediment is homogenized before each centrifugation. Once the last centrifugation is completed and the 3 subsamples are pooled, the Meiofauna is transferred to a small recipient with formaldehyde 4% to preserve the specimens. A few drops of rose-bengal dye are added to color the organic material within the samples and make the recognition of Meiofauna easier. The remaining sediment is stored in 4% formaldehyde. Cleaning the materials. All the materials that were used with Ludox should be cleaned with warm water. Ensure that tube holders are not covered with a layer of dried Ludox. If any material is covered with Ludox, it needs to be cleaned with a 30% now solution.